I'm Alan Spears with Occupy Democrats, and it would seem that Representative Byron Donalds enjoys the taste of foot because he simply cannot keep it out of his mouth. Yes, Donalds, who is actually a top VP contender for Trump, assuming he's going to be able to continue to run, was once again found himself in a bit of hot water. Donalds has actually been campaigning alongside Trump recently, and at one of the most recent events, Donalds made the unbelievable and outlandish claim that black families were better under the Jim Crow era than they are now. Now, to briefly summarize and simplify a huge point in our country's history, the Jim Crow laws were effectively a response, or really a retaliation, to the passing of the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments. Now, these three amendments guaranteed former slaves citizenship as well as the right to vote. However, simultaneously, white Southern Democrats passed a series of laws at the state and local level, collectively known as the Jim Crow laws, which allowed businesses and other institutions to discriminate and marginalize black individuals. These Jim Crow laws absolutely allowed and even encouraged discrimination against black individuals, as well as deny them basic rights. Now again, this is a bit of an oversimplification, but it blows my mind that Donalds can stand up and say these things. Now, I'm not the only one who found this confusing and wrong and offensive, as Hakeem Jeffries, the Democratic minority leader of the House, had a number of different things to say about these ridiculous claims. Take a look for yourself and see what Jeffries had to say about Donald's ridiculous and antiquated claims.
Mr. Speaker, it has come to my attention that a so-called leader has made the factually inaccurate statement that black folks were better off during Jim Crow. That's an outlandish, outrageous, and out-of-pocket observation. We were not better off when a young boy named Emmett Till could be brutally murdered without consequence because of Jim Crow. We were not better off when black women could be sexually assaulted without consequence because of Jim Crow. We were not better off when people could be systematically lynched without consequence because of Jim Crow. We were not better off when children could be denied a high-quality education without consequence because of Jim Crow. We were not better off when people could be denied the right to vote without consequence because of Jim Crow. How dare you make such an ignorant observation? You better check yourself before you wreck yourself. I yield back.
Yeah, so let's break down a little bit more about what Donalds said, what Jeffries said, and what the hell is happening. So first off, I want to draw your attention to what Jeffries said about Emmett Till. Now, if you're unfamiliar with Emmett Till, you absolutely need to learn more about him and what happened to him, but to briefly summarize, Emmett Till was a 14-year-old black child who was abducted, tortured, and eventually lynched in Mississippi in 1955. Now, what exactly happened between Emmett Till and Carolyn Bryant is a matter of some speculation and conflicting information. However, his interaction with this woman violated this unspoken rule or this unspoken law about a black man interacting with a white woman, and because of this, he was kidnapped, brutally tortured, and eventually killed. And this all happened under the Jim Crow laws. The two men that were responsible for kidnapping, brutally torturing, and eventually killing this 14-year-old boy were acquitted. And again, this only happened 70 years ago. If Emmett Till were still alive, if he had not been brutally murdered, he would still very likely be alive today. Really let that sink in. And Emmett Till's murder is just one well-known instance that occurred over the years of these Jim Crow laws. I can't believe Donalds would make this claim. I can't believe he would say that black people are better off then than they are now. And look, we still have a great deal of work to do with racial equality, and we're far from any semblance of a perfect society right now. But to say that now is worse than then, where a young boy could literally be tortured and killed, and his killer's gotten off scot-free, I don't understand how he could say these things. Now, something I also want to address head-on and preempt, because I know so many uninformed people love to make this claim, is that, oh, well, it was the white Southern Democrats. They were the ones that introduced the Jim Crow laws. And you're absolutely right. However, have you heard about the Great Switch? Now, for those of you who have not heard about the Great Switch, as it was called, this is where the Republican and the Democratic parties effectively swapped ideologies. Again, to briefly summarize and recap a very expansive subject in our country's history, following the Civil War, the majority of the northern states were actually controlled by the Republican Party. Now, prior to the Civil War and prior to the Reconstruction era, many Republicans were already abolitionists as there were growing tensions, especially in the North, to abolish slavery. And Democrats, who were at that time mostly in the southern states, saw the central government kind of as the major enemy, and they fought to preserve the right to maintain slavery. Now, it really wasn't until the Great Depression 60 years later that we really saw the two parties swap. Now, in 1929, the economy crashed, and Herbert Hoover, a Republican and the president at the time, opted not to intervene. Alternatively, Franklin D. Roosevelt, a Democrat, wanted to implement changes and try to bring the country out of this depression. FDR effectively ran his campaign on government intervention to pull us out of the Great Depression, as well as financial assistance and generally the welfare of people. He won in a massive landslide in 1932, and a lot of his policies set the stage and the foundation of what is now the Democratic Party. And while FDR's policies and platform were essentially a call for bigger government, the Republicans adamantly opposed this. The Republicans then became the party of minimal federal government intervention, and that is essentially what they still continue to run on to this day. Now, there's a whole lot more to this whole swapping of the parties. However, it should be noted that when you have so many people like Donalds or like Trump or like so many others that are like, oh, well, it was the Democrats that started all this. It was the Democrats that did all these bad things. No, it's not. They were Democrats in name only. Everything they stood for, all of the policies that they had at the time prior to the Great Swap, was Republican. But they never like to mention that little tidbit of historical information in any of their campaign speeches. But I digress. It is clear to me that Donalds is willing to say or do pretty much anything so long as he can be tapped as Trump's VP pick. While we still have a ton of work left to do with eliminating discrimination and racism and inequality in our country, it is undeniable that things are slowly but steadily improving. We've absolutely made mistakes and missteps, and many people have had to pay a price that, frankly, they shouldn't have. Look, I don't know if Donalds was just trying to drum up controversy to get some attention on him or to try to win some support with Trump and the MAGA people, but I can tell you this. We weren't better under Jim Crow laws. And Donalds, if you're out there, I would just maybe stop what you're doing for like 5 minutes and just really ask yourself deep down, is what I'm saying or what I'm doing or even what I'm just implying maybe, is that really what's best for this country? We don't need to revert 70 years back to an era of greater racism and prejudice. We already have enough trouble with that as is.